Okay, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're joining us from Europe. My name is Lisa Hellqvist. I am the Managing Director of Copperberg, and I will also be your moderator and guide throughout this afternoon or morning if you're joining us from the US. Just a few practical things before we launch the first session of today, and that is, of course, if you have any questions, you post them in the chat or use the Q&A function at the very bottom of the toolbar you see in front of you. We will try to cover as many of the questions as possible, of course, as long as the time allows for it. Should you have any technical problems, you can also let us know if there's a problem with the sound or you don't see correctly, for example, let us know that way, and the team and I will look in to see what we can do in order to sort that. Of course, questions are welcome at all times, but I will raise them at the very end of each speaker session. The first session of today with Todd Snelgrove on total profit added and the value-based pricing model is pre-recorded. And I sat down with him just a few days ago to actually tailor-make this session for you today. We are following that up with Brian Hirt from Zilliant. He's the Director of Product Management, and he will actually teach us on how we can rediscover discounts and rebates. And when done properly, this will drive your pricing function forward rather than being damaging in settlement that can happen to your organization. Then we are following that up with Benjamin Schwarzer, who is the Principal of Functional Competence Center Sales, Marketing and Pricing at Horvath Partners. And he's going to talk about AI-based pricing and what we can actually do in order to leverage AI in our pricing function. But with that said, I will hand over to today's first session and let Todd start his presentation. And of course, I would do so by sharing my screen. And let me know if there's any one of you who is encountering any problems with the sound or so forth. And I hope you enjoy. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's pricing summit for the US market. And during this morning's session, I have with me, let's say, an old Copperberg friend and a pricing expert with dignity, I would say, many years in the industry, been both with ABB, SKF. I think we worked together in both those positions, but at least one of the most knowledgeable value experts, I would say, that I know of at least. So I'm very honored to have Todd Snelgrove with us this morning. And he's going to walk us through selling and pricing for the value you deliver. So over to you, Todd.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Copperberg, for all the work you do around this to share best practices. So what I'll do today is try to take some best practices. Some of them will come from this book you see here, but talking about value first, then price. What is the value we deliver to customers? Then how do we price it? And when we started the book, it was about best practices that companies do in that regard. But then we started to ask procurement people, how do you buy? Do you care about value? What's important to you? So you're going to get a little bit from the buy side and the sell side. And believe it or not, procurement's willing to pay for value if you can quantify it. You see a title there called Total Profit Added. It's an evolution of total cost of ownership. I'll get into this. But again, I look at pricing as part of a bigger sales marketing strategy of, how do you set price? How do you get price? And how do you get the customers to believe that price is fair and they're getting more value from you, even though they're paying you a higher price? So I was one of the first, to my knowledge, global VP, which means I lived on a plane, but of value, because creating value is great, but if you can't communicate it so customers are willing to pay for it, it's kind of worthless. So I start off every discussion with colleagues and customers, making sure we're using the right term. Price, cost, and value are three different things completely. All 5 letters, but that's about it. Price is what you pay for something, $10. And cost is the $10 plus the shipping, the taxation, the energy, the per minute fee, the ink cost, whatever it is. And what customers might think is that if they reduce the price they pay for something, they reduce their overall cost. That is an assumption. That's assuming everything else is equal. All of the research, all my experience, and the statistics I will share show that's wrong. And a side note, we'll take a look at your own marketing material. Whenever you're reading something, whenever you see one of those words, stop and think, do they mean price or cost? Because I will argue I could be the highest price, but the lowest cost. That's what you want, Mr. Customer. And it's funny, I have done a lot of work in the procurement world, and procurement people will say they'll send back out, RFPs, RFQs, the annual discussion about, what do they need to do? And they will say that sometimes, depends who you talk to, we'll talk about, we ask companies, suppliers about cost reductions, and suppliers come back with price reductions, which is one way to affect cost, but only one way. And not to be arrogant, but if a customer ever asked me, I need a price reduction, I said, you need a price reduction or a cost reduction? Same thing. No, they're not. Well, I need it to be this year. I can make it cost effective this year. Again, it all depends on what your offering is, but I can make it this year. I can make it hard. I can guarantee it. And I can make sure it drops to your bottom line, because a price savings might get to your bottom line. A cost savings does get to your bottom line because it overlooks your whole operation and it's the lowest number. So the world that I come from the B2B technical engineering space, but I see this in every industry I work in, whether it's pharmaceutical or services or high tech or whatever it is. There used to be the technical buyer that had all the authority. They knew what they were buying, they knew what they wanted, and they would tell purchasing what to do. 20-something years ago, I started to see the rise of procurement, whether they reported to the VP of Finance or they became their own chief procurement officer. But your messaging, pricing, strategy, differentiation better be able to not only articulate what that value is to the technical buyer or user of your product or service, but engage procurement to have that discussion. Because if not, they have a lot more power than people think, or they used to. So what are some of the best practices? And in the book that I mentioned here, there's a professor named Jim Anderson, an American professor, just retired from Kellogg, that I've done a lot of work with. And we said, there are 20 plus years of working together. How many companies say, I want to sell value, or I sell value, I just can't get paid for it? Or what's the problem? And we sat down and just took a look and said, there's 9 elements that need to be addressed. And what a lot of times is companies look at one of the 9, maybe 2 of the 9. So put these in the back of your mind and say, are we addressing all of these? As pricing professionals, you might not have authority over all these things, but they need to be addressed. So on the ability to sell value, equipping the team to make them able to sell it, it starts with value conceptualization. If you're creating a new product or service, are you embedding the value questions along the stage gate process, saying, what is this worth to my customer? Yes, by different industries, by different scenarios, by different this, by different that, it will mean different numbers. But if you don't start asking those questions and getting a flavor, and I'll give you some better examples and visuals in a few slides, but I can only laugh at how many times I've seen products and services get to the market. Customers said they wanted it. Yeah, that's not the same as them saying they're willing to pay more for it. I'll take anything better for free, but doesn't mean I'm willing to pay for it unless you ask, what are you willing to pay for it? Is it part of your selling process? If you're using a CRM system or whatever it is, but you've got to have a value discussion with your customers early and often, not in the middle of the RFQ or RFP buying stage. Once I've decided I want to buy a gasoline car that's 4 doors and there's 3 bids that meet that requirement, it's tough to say, no, look at value, look at this, look at an electric car, look at a diesel car, look at Ubering all the time. Once I've made my mind up, it's too late. So the thought leadership to get out to the market to say, the next time you buy this, you need to rethink and look at all these different costs and value, has to happen earlier than later. Do you have a tool? I will show you, I believe, a slide that has the tool that I built. There's companies that do this now, but a systematic tool that anybody in the world could go in, run the ROI analysis for a customer. And yes, I know that every customer is, what they value is different. The numbers they use are different, but the formula is the same. So real quickly, I'll get certain industries will say, oh, we can't do that. Every one of my customers bespoke. And I said, yes, I understand that. But the formula, for example, for energy savings or downtime reduction or whatever it is the same everywhere in the world. We'll use energy savings. I don't know the formula, but it's kilowatts times this, times that. The number you put in the formula might change, 10 cents a kilowatt versus 20 cents. the amount of impact you as a supplier can have can change, and how big of an effect that is on the customer can change. In the steel industry, it might be a huge expense, energy, whereas the financial services industry or lawyers, it might be very small. But the formula is the same. So asking salespeople to sit down and figure out what value is without giving them these structured things with ranges and ideas, good luck. And if you do, you'll find that they'll all be calculating differently, which means some of them are calculating it wrong. And they've been given training. And again, yes, you need that kickoff training. You need an immersive 3-day, we're going to role play this. We're going to do this. We're going to run cases. We're going to try all these things, not a 30-minute, I trained you type scenario. And then is it ongoing? Do you have somebody that's constantly there? And I look at this as a change management program. If it's a one and done, which is what a lot of companies look at, and there's nobody there to keep it up going and ongoing and improving it, it dies. So again, it became my full-time job. A lot of companies now are creating positions of commercial excellence. Some of them are very value focused. Some of them are very operational focused. I don't care about titles, but somebody has to be the value merchant within your organization, pushing, cajoling, supporting, working with, training, going on joint calls with customers. So that gives you the tools to do it. But what about the want? And I think this is where Professor Anderson said a lot of people miss. So sales compensation. If you're going to measure your sales team on volume, sales dollars, they're going to cut a price. So publicly traded industrial company, 10% net, not EBITDA and all those, I hate to say funny numbers, but net 10%. You cut the price 5%, that's half. And people say to me, Todd, I cut the price 5% and get the order. My company might not even adjust the sales dollars by 5%. Even if they do, no offense, who cares? I can go somewhere else. Fighting for that 5% is going to take me a lot of work, a lot of effort. It's not worth it. It's half the profit. It better be made worth it. In a lot of industries, there's not new customers popping up. So when you have customers, you better find a way to get more of the volume from there and sell it at a better price to them. Are you giving them value buying options? Are you willing to put some fee at risk? Saying how great you are is one thing. Putting in your marketing material, your PowerPoint slides is one thing, but saying, you want to know what? We do have an option. I'll talk to you a bit about that, of putting some fee at risk here. Business culture. I was very lucky here. I had a CEO that, again, created this position. I had a president that was adamant about it. There's quotes and books from them. They said, we've got to have a business culture that's all about value, which means, boss, you can't be picking up the phone at the end of a quarter saying, find an order, discount it, load your channel. I don't care. Because customers become conditioned to that. So he looked back and said, you want to know what, all we're doing is shifting volume. We're never gaining volume. I've got to have a different business culture that's value focused. And then finally, customer culture. Again, getting out there, getting them to rethink, when I buy that, maybe that's not a commodity. Maybe I should rethink that. Maybe there's more there than I realize. So 2 terms, ability to pay. We'll start there. I won't worry about my timing as we go here, but ability to pay. And, there are some times where customers say, I don't have the money, Todd. There's only $100 in the store. You want $200. I mean, I don't have money. But funny enough, that's not always true. If I can quantify value and build the business case, they can find money. My old boss said, you want to know what? I'll go to the bank and borrow money. If there's a business case that shows me an ROI, I believe it, it's hard value, I'll find the money. I'll borrow the money. Maybe they don't have the ability to pay. Maybe you do a program where you pay me half up front and you pay me more than half over the life of it. I mean, again, option 1's $100. Option 2 is $50, but $10 a month till it gets to $120. You're going to have to get a benefit if you're taking some risk, but the ability to quantify value dramatically changes the ability to pay. And all I ask is somebody at home saying, I don't have the money to buy that right now. If I came to you with a hard business case that says, yeah, but it would save you this year, this year, this year, we could reallocate your budget, take that money to pay for this year. And there's a payback over this period. You think maybe you'd rethink it and go, maybe I'll find that money. Maybe I'll take it from somewhere else. Maybe I'll go borrow the money if the business case is good enough. At the same time, there's something called willingness to pay, WTP. I think this is interesting is, yes, Todd, that's important, but I've got 5 programs this year. New upgrade of this new acquisition, this new COVID, whatever it is. You're number 7 on the list. The only way to get from number 7 to number 3 to get the capital is to say, you're assuming the payback I'm going to deliver and bring to you. Here's the business case that shows it's much more valuable than you think. And remember, you're competing not always against the next best alternative. I need to buy a car, so it's either your car or the other person's car. No, there's another option: public transportation, buses, walking, car sharing, riding a bicycle. You know, I've heard numerous stories where customers had money allocated to buy something and they ended up investing in something completely different. Why? Because that lower priority thing built a business case that showed a better return, incremental return. And I'll just continue to sweat my existing assets, and this is free new money I'm going to get if I invest in that. So two scenarios that dramatically affect your ability to price for value and get paid for it. So great visual. Years ago, our sales team would go to the market, and I'm gonna go back to my old world. So these are two bearings. They look the same, they smell the same, they both do the same thing. Two cell phones, two laptops, two cars. Okay, the $10 and $15 is just as an example, but our team would be equipped based on their experience to go to the market and say, yes, from a price perspective, 10 is better than 15. It's 33% cheaper, but, and then we would say, with some slides or stories that, yeah, but the one on the left, and we don't need to worry the how and why right now, but you know, you're gonna need more lubricant to make the machine turn. It's not as energy efficient as mine is. You're gonna need more inventory. It's gonna fail more often. And there'd be some reasoning behind that. And mine's gonna do this better than that because of this research or this case study or this. We'd stop there. And the technical person I was talking to probably could sit there and smile and go, that's worth more than $5. Less times I got to fix it, less parts I have to have. They could just do a subconscious calculation that says less and more. I know what those things mean, and I can put a relative number to it. But we found that with finance people, or these people, when they need to go to their boss to get the money, we needed to put some numbers to it. So the one on the left here is $10 price, $77 of operating and disposal costs. The one on the right, 15 for a total of 57, creating a $30 of profit impact. That's profit, not a cost savings. That's a profit impact. Now, you might be sitting there going, "Oh, that's great, Todd. You've got a pretty slide, but you know, my customers won't just accept a pretty slide." You're right. What they will ask is some of the following questions. You know, well, let me just first say, you know, what I want is that price difference to be seen as an investment. You know, I'm going to ask you to pay $5 more to get $30 payback, and you want to know what that means. I only do 1/6. 15% right of my assumptions for this to pay for itself. So that's my first closing technique. But, you know, first question is, where did this data come from? You know, we've done this 100 times. Here's some examples. Here's some case studies. Here's some probabilities. I've done it at your own facility in Europe or in Canada or somewhere else. I've done it in other industries, but have the same applications. You know, does it resonate with me? Do I believe that it'll make sense? What's the risk reward? Again, I'm asking for, you know, a $5 price increase, but with a $30 payback. I need to be 15% right. If I was asking the customer to pay $29 more and the benefit was $30, so it would create $1 of value, it would have to be guaranteed. It would have to be measurable. It would have to be quick, right? So the lower the percentage you're taking of the impact, the more risk people are willing to take. Just think of stocks and bonds. We do it all the time. There's more risk in one, but there's more reward theoretically. So, you know, we take those different choices once they're priced properly. So, you know, give me some believability, give me some references, and show me some payback, and then maybe even make some fee at risk. The price perk. You know, the customers will tell me, Todd, I can see price. It's there. It's quoted. It's visible. The problem is with you sales teams is you don't explain all those things under the waterline. And if you do, you just use terms like obsolescence or downtime or production or quality. You don't put numbers, references, or impacts. Remember, my job as a buyer is to buy 25 different types of things. I'm not an expert on what you do. You better bring me the impact. So, total cost of ownership. Great concept. It's looking at the cost of something through the life cycle of when you buy it, use it, and then the like. So I used to say, okay, that makes sense, but what I want to do is help my customers be more profitable. There's two ways to be more profitable in general: cost and then revenue. revenue could be sell more or sell it at a better price. And the problem with total cost of ownership, it only looks at the one side of the equation. So the term I use is total profit added. I'm going to walk through an industrial example, but this works in the medical world. Total cost of care. It looks in the renewable world, energy, levelized cost of energy. It works in almost any world I can think of it. I'll give you some examples, I think, in the next slide. But quickly, somebody builds something. Somebody's going to build the laptop. Somebody's going to build the car. Somebody's going to build the excavator. And their sales team is sitting there saying, how long should this machine last? How robust does it need to be to last that long? How difficult is it for me to manufacture in general? But what if you could help them get to market faster than their competitor? In some industries, that's huge. In the high-tech world, for cell phones, you miss the back-to-school rush, you're in trouble. You miss the Christmas rush, you're in trouble. In the medical world, we all know the vials being a problem in today's COVID situation. So time to market can be huge. Then it's what would old time be versus new time be versus revenue times profit. I mean, we can start putting some numbers in. What about margin or selling more? Mr. Customer, I'm going to add a functionality to your machine that helps you differentiate it. Yours will use less energy, less water, less ink. I want you to use that as a sales argument to your customers. Therefore, paying me a little bit more here, but it helps you differentiate and sell more there. And maybe I'm even willing to enter a performance agreement based on that. So they're designing in the total life cycle value of that machine. So somebody builds it, now somebody buys it. So the chief procurement officer of your company buys laptops or whatever they buy. They don't buy them for themselves to use, they buy them for the whole company to use. And I think an important point here is, quick story, when I was at SKF, our CEO said, look at my chief procurement officer and his team talked to me about all these TCO savings they have all the time. You seem to have a more wider view. I want the two of you to get together. I mean, how are we measuring value for my customers and how am I measuring value when I'm buying? So you can imagine the resistance from a chief procurement officer. I sat down with him and just said, hey, he's become a good friend of mine. He wrote a chapter in the book, Boeing Stenson. And he goes, we look at what meets the minimum criteria and we measure total cost of ownership. They said, just show me what we measure. And in general, it will be something like the price of the product or service that meets the requirement, plus the shipping, the receiving, the currency, the minimum order quantity, the return policy, the tariffs, the tax advantages, these types of things. That's very old school. He's evolved that completely. But that would be, so the point here is, just because a customer says I buy on value, I buy on total cost of ownership, I would say, show me what you measure. Let me show you mine. I'm going to just say, for example, that some companies might buy on 10 measurables. I have 400. What about energy? What about downtime? What about ease of installation? Again, so somebody builds it, somebody bought it. Now, once the company buys it, somebody's going to use it. They're going to take it, they're going to install it, operate it, maintain it. They're going to take their laptop, they're going to turn it on, and they're going to use it and then upgrade it. Okay, you get the idea. This will be different for everybody on the call, but how much energy, how much ink, how much water, how much downtime? How about spare parts? Can I get spare parts? Are the spare parts priced reasonable? I think we have mostly North Americans on here. Is it the razor blade razor model? I sold you the razor cheap, but the razor blade's where the money is. I mean, does it affect my production? If I can help a client increase their production volume, speed, because of maybe less downtime or speeding up the machine as an example, or reducing quality mistakes, that's a revenue improvement. That's marginal cash right to the bottom line. So that's not a cost savings. Now, there's ways to make it look like a cost saving, but it's revenue. And by the way, customers like to hear about revenue. They've heard about cost savings forever. Maybe we should talk about revenue. And then finally, disposal. Most times people don't look at disposal, but disposal can have a huge impact. Maybe you sell something that depreciates slower than somebody else's. Maybe it's better to buy the $60,000 car that's worth $30,000 in 5 years than the $50,000 car that's worth $15,000. The initial purchase price might be lower, but the net total might be more or less. Yes, sustainability be important, but there might be some costs: residual value, refurbishment value, scrap value, secondary market value. So take this, put it on your wall, and ask your team to walk through and say, what do we do where here? Can we put some numbers to it? Then I can look at what my pricing is and how to price for that. And what you find is that the big number is usually the operating and maintenance costs. So great study from Accenture. They looked at 4 different asset classes. So on the far left, we have commercial aircraft. Think Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier. Class 8 trucks or 18-wheelers. Industrial equipment, fan, gearboxes, pumps, motors. Light duty pickup trucks for work. That dark blue part is the initial purchase price. So I think that's 8 on the left-hand side through 12. And that pinkish color is how much they're spending, the operating cost, maybe the disposal cost. So, how much fuel. So if you were to go buy an airplane for the fun of it, for your company, that would represent that whatever, $100 million cost would represent 8%. There's 92% more cost in how much fuel, depreciation, finance, spare parts, refurbishment, upgrades, labor, etc. So in the industrial equipment world, if I was selling to an OEM and I would say, you want to know what? I've got a product for you, and it's going to be more expensive. And this is a complete example because it would never be this much, but I'm going to increase the total price of your machine by 10%. You sell the machine at $100,000, 10%. They go, whoa, customers are going to freak. But then I would say it'll reduce the operating cost for the customer by 2%. And I remember saying this on our procurement side, Todd, I don't know what math they taught you in Canada, but why would I pay 10% more to save 2%? I said, yeah, you need the denominator. A 10% increase of 12% is 1.2. But a 2% of that 88 number is 1.76. Turns out 1.76 versus 1.2 is about 40% more impactful. Maybe we're making the wrong assumptions all the time. Now it's our job to show how we can affect that. It's our job to show the OEM, the person that builds the machine, how they can sell that to the end user. It's our job to go to the end user and say, hey, when you go back to buy your new machine or car or laptop, look at these things, specify my product or service. So, this research exists everywhere. I mean, not everywhere. You got to do some work, but you can find some stuff. And maybe it's 80-20 for your world or 85-15. I can't imagine it'd be completely different. Consumer calculations. And again, I think we have a lot more B2B people that are watching, but just real quickly, this is people saying, I call them the European washers and dryers, the front loading ones. If anybody remembers, when they came to North America, they would talk about 20% less water usage, 15% less energy. Well, maybe it's just me, but I don't know how much water my washer uses. I don't know what the cost of that water is. So 20% of a number without a number doesn't mean anything. Once they started to put on the 20% and do the calculation and the energy savings calculation, they could show people that these machines would have a payback of 3 years. I don't know how long the washing machine is going to last or the dryer, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to assume it's more than 3 years. This is General Electric saying, you want to know what? There's a lot of money. There's $2,000. Let's not look at 10 kilowatts or 3 watts or something. There's $2,000 of upgrading your whole house over the life of the bulbs. That's worth your time to do it. Here's British Air, UK-based carrier, competing against the low price carriers. They're not low cost. They're low price. They're taking their low price advantage and using it to be low cost. And then trying to say, you want to know what? By the time you check in, by the time you pay for your bags, by the time you do this, this, and this, you're actually more expensive. Real quickly, the short version of the story. I once took a low-priced airline in Europe and flew from London to Paris. Well, the airports were different that I took off on, where I landed. The check-in fee and then the fee to get to the airport and land and get from the airport into Paris. The total cost of the low price was double what the price was of the traditional carrier. I mean, I should have looked at, my company should have been happy looking at, Todd, it's the total cost to get you from downtown London to downtown Paris where you need to be. The price of the flight's part of that. Let's look at everything else. So converts a want into a need, puts some real numbers to it, justifies not buying the lowest price, and it helps people make change. And this is Tesla, just as an example, real quickly, because I think it's funny. They're doing an interesting cost analysis here. The one thing is they don't really talk about the price of gas in here. The payment and the charging costs, insurance. So they're talking about all the costs to run it. They're not talking about, how much gas savings you're going to have, which would be different for you and me. We'd have to make some assumptions. But I think in the original TCO version they had, the calculator, they talked about time savings. And I laughed. And the calculation was stop going to the gas station one time a week for that's 5 minutes. So that's 20 minutes. That's worth. I'm like, okay, you're stretching your calculation here. But turns out if you have an electric car, you can go to the high occupancy vehicle lanes, and they evolved it eventually to say, if you're in one of these cities that allows this, if your commute was an hour and now your commute will be 30 minutes, that's an hour a day for whatever, 200 days a year, 200 hours, 3 years, that's 600 hours. Isn't your time worth $7 an hour? The second I saw that, I said, I would have bought that for sure. I would have bought that. Again, I know the math was quick there, but you get the idea. In that case, time, they repositioned it to really be worth something. Just procurement care. I love this lady. Huthwaite International is a sales training organization, but we were on a stage together, and I'll read it. You can read it, but suppliers don't come to us with a business case. It's what we want. Sell your value and our numbers to get our attention. And my favorite line, if you can't quantify your value, don't be surprised at the failure of procurement to do so. Because there's people sitting there going, we can't do that for us. You can't do it for services. You can't do it for our industry. You can't do it for our, whatever the reason is, you can. I mean, again, I've got examples from almost every industry and parts of the world. I will not go through this because of time. You get the slides to look at, but people that buy this way buy in best value, not lowest price, or more profitable. Okay. People that bought this way were 35% more profitable. Industrial people by this association called MAPI. Economic prize winning, Nobel Prize winner, the Vested Outsourcing Manual is based on it. Professor Vidisek wrote a chapter in the book. I won't go through all this, but there's a lot of meat around this. It says buying best value, total profit added is where the money is. So value propositions. I need to know the value before I can price for it. We built a tool. Again, reach out to me. There's people in the market that can do this now, but again, that allow people to sit down and do the ROI analysis with the customer that says, hey, yes, it's a higher price, but here's all the impact areas. Here's the business case. Here's the justification to go to your boss and say, yes, I'm investing our money with this solution, product or service, and here's the payback. And I left this one in because, we're never going to know all the numbers. We're going to have to make assumptions. We're going to have to ask customers. We're going to have to do some research. We're going to have to do some reasonable assumptions and say, does that make sense? And again, then we're going to have to look is, if all my assumptions need to be perfect for you to have a 1% return, that's probably not a good deal. But again, if the ROI is 1,000%, you could do quickly a sensitivity analysis and realize, you want to know what, even if I'm half wrong, you're still at a 500% return. So not knowing all the numbers is not a reason not to do this. Pricing. Price is based on value, not cost. Yes, you need to know what your cost is, but don't start with that. So I call this the LBS, London Business School value pricing model, because it's how I met a professor there years ago. And he basically said, Todd, if you can quantify value, you found the holy grail of pricing. So this is kind of a way to walk through it. You're launching a new product or service and just say, okay, what is the value for the customer versus the next best alternative? Okay. So again, that customer type, that industry, that country, I mean, the value for one person might be 12, someone might be 15, someone might be 17. You'll get some clusters. Well, process industries are around 17, but this type of industry is around 4. Either way, you're going to get a bunch of ranges, but now you can start to get some averages and means and by different industries. Start there. What is the value? And there is always an alternative. Doing nothing is an alternative, by the way, not changing. Then look at your cost to produce. Now, see, is there enough magnitude here to move forward? Because if you start with the cost to produce, then somebody will say, well, let's mark that up 3 times or 2.5 times, whatever it is. Don't. You could leave a lot of money on the table. I know my cost to produce is whatever, $2.70. Different people will get different values, but there's a bunch of them around this $15. Some will get more. In maybe your industry, you can do variable pricing based on segments. In some industries, that's much tougher to do. Now you set the sale price. And this is interesting. Do not try to set it at the perceived value, because then you've extracted all the value from the customer. It's called the value surplus, is the difference between what I pay you for and what I perceive the value is. The more you try to take it at, the less there is for me, the less incentive there is for me to change. So Again, depends on your industry, but in this case, I just set the price at say $12. Leaves a nice value surplus for the customer. Then all my sales and marketing strategies are, you want to know what, Mr. Customer, it's worth more than 15. You didn't take into account time. You didn't take into account this, or I've got a program that can actually help you get more out of it. So it's really worth 17, 18, 19, $20. Now, I will continue to take cost out as I can, but my price increases will be less than the perceived value increases for the customer. That's how you expand the overall margin. I've got 3 quick slides in here, and I got this from a professor, and I just was sitting in one of his classes once and went, wow, we do in my industry, my experience, the exact opposite. And I know B2C is a different world than B2B, but just real quickly look at these things and see if you're doing any of these in your own company that are probably confusing your customers. 1, choice, the paradox of choice. Engineers, technical people like to think the more offers they give customers, the better. I've seen offers that have more tabs on a spreadsheet, you couldn't figure it out. And they're trying to, I hate to show how smart they are. Give choice, give customers too much choice, they won't make a decision. So the jam study basically was they put a zillion different types of jams out, flavor, sizes. People are drawn to them. They're excited with choice. Then they look and go, I don't know which one. Buyer's remorse starts to set in, confusion, you stay with the status quo. So they found if you give less choice, it's much better. The question is, how many choices? What I find is a lot of people seem to think, well, we'll give 2. We'll give the normal full value offering of us. We'll say that's the $30 one, and we'll create a stripped down, low price, good enough version. Don't do it. Call me. There's 500 examples. It's never worked and it never will work unless it's completely different with completely different quality. But if it's the same product with a different brand on it, you make a minor change to it that doesn't change the effect. I have this thing called the internet. I can figure out that just putting a different badge on it doesn't change the value. So in this scenario, we go for dinner and at $10, $30, is it a good week? Is it a special occasion? Whatever it is. You'll find if you're given 2 choices, it depends on which study you look at. 80% in general will choose the lower price, good enough version. 2 choices, people take lowest price one. I've created a decoy one here. The high price bottle that's from France, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's interesting. That $30 one seems reasonable. So the only issue I have with pricing people or their bosses is they're like, well, I want to sell more of the $50 one. The $50 one won't be bought. If it's ever bought, everybody jumps up and down. But can you create an offering that has more return variations, performance guarantees, upgrade options, price it so high that your normal offering goes, you want to know what? I don't want to pay all that extra. I'll go back to the $30 one. And the other example, I think we've all done this. We've gone to the movie theater. I'm given 2 choices and I will rationalize. Am I hungry? Have I had dinner yet? Is the whole family with me? X, Y, Z. In this case, the middle one is designed to make the big one look like the greatest deal, the exact opposite of the slide before. Again, the problem is some finance people say, I want to sell the middle one. Nobody buys the middle one. Again, can you do this for your business? In this case, you set the middle one as a stripped down version of what you have, but you include all the stuff to make the $7 one, the free technical support, the design engineering, the phone calls, whatever it is. And I know this is becoming more and more of a discussion, performance-based contracting, performance and outcome-based. I mean, performance is KPI-based. I hit this KPI, but I want the outcome. Now, power by the hour, GE engines and Rolls-Royce, who created it, is one thing that I didn't know when I started this and that I've learned over time. It's they're getting paid based on the availability of that engine to fly, not an actual flying. Because I was like, wait a minute, if I'm an airline or an airplane company, I can make all my costs variable, forget customer service, I would decide not to fly a plane sometimes. It's not loaded enough. So it's like, no, my machine was able to fly. You chose not to fly because of a strike or a pricing decision or something else broke. I'm still getting paid. There are ways to do these contracts that are not near as risky as people think. I don't have time to go through it all. That's a whole nother discussion. Please reach out. We can have a quick thing. But you're seeing the renewable energy. People saying I'll pay for kilowatt hour produced. People saying, you want to know what? I'll pay for the elevator to move. You own the elevators, you maintain the elevators, I'll pay for them to move. Robots for surgery. In a lot of countries, I mean, they're government mandated, whatever, they're cash strapped. You want to know what? I get paid based on every surgery I do. How about, I'm going to make up a number. Every time I use the robot, it's 10,000. I guarantee I'll use it this many times, but you maintain the robot, you give me all the OpEx costs for the robot, etc. I don't know how well that robot's going to use. So yes, I've got to get some guarantees on the usage side. Caterpillar on their big excavation equipment to tons of dirt moved, and the Xerox's document processing people of the world. So old statistic from 2018, but I mean, again, COVID might have changed things greater or not, but the world is moving towards this, and it's not as risky as it sounds. And all I've done at the bottom here is say, you're trying to give customers choice. You can buy it from me and then take all the risk reward. I'm going to buy it, but Todd, I know how to run this machine longer than you. I'm going to get a lot of life out of it. I'll do all the state things. I'm going to buy it with some sort of a finance. Okay, yeah, that's really buying. Leasing, saying, okay, fine, I'm going to return the asset back. KPI, I want uptime. I want this. I want warranty. I want minimum performance. And then outcome being the extreme. And all they are is moving along a risk reward. So when I was with an SKF, we created a program to quantify value, and we use it towards our guaranteed performance models with some customers. And our first play at this was 100% risk reward 20 years ago. Mr. Customer, what's your total spend? Pay me less to do it. I'll come in here and run your whole factory, all the parts, the people, the whole process. But when I exceed these KPIs, you pay me part of it. People were drawn to it, but it was too risky. It was too big. It was too complex. I'm used to buying a product from you. You want to take over my whole facility. Whoa, too big of a jump. How about, I know I'm a higher price than my competitors. What I'm going to do is not give you a price down. I'm going to give you guaranteed value. And if not, I will write you a check. I think this is a 5-page contract that says, we're going to agree on what is value. Do you care about energy savings, water savings, downtime, labor? What was the calculation we'll use? What numbers will we use in the calculation? Again, I had all these things that they didn't have, and we just say accepted, or they were referenced somewhere else. How will the customer sign off on it? I propose this value proposition to you. If you implement it, it'd be worth this. If you don't implement it, I'm still taking it. And then what happens when I exceed the targets? There's more of these, than 200 of these agreements in the world for big Fortune 1000 companies. Never written a penalty check. They've rolled over years upon years, won numerous awards from customers saying, that's what I want my suppliers to do, to continuously be here creating more value for me. So my old boss, retired CEOs, how many ways does our team have to discount? If I given them a way not to, if I given them a bullet that says, yeah, telling how great I am and how old my company is and how nice I am is not one thing, but you want to know what? I'm willing to put some fee at risk. So some final thoughts. Love this guy, Rob McGuire, Chief Procurement Officer, used to be a customer, wrote a great chapter in the book, but real quick story. He was on stage at a sales conference somewhere, and somebody from a telecom company came up to him that sells mobile phones and said, Mr. Chief Procurement Officer, I've been trying to get on your diary for the last whatever number of years. And he looked and he said, sir, I got bigger things to worry about. We're buying these companies, are merging that. I mean, again, cell phone price per minute by kilobyte or whatever it is. And the salesperson or key account person says, no, we think there was $1 million opportunity for you because, we could help your people process orders faster, whatever it was. The point of the story is, if you want a customer to rethink having a discussion with you at the right level, put a number out. Doesn't need to be guaranteed. It needs to be reasonable. You need to have a reference. You did some work. But he made the assumption, I don't have time for cell phones or office supplies or whatever it is. I have time for a 5 million or 2 million, whatever it was, dollar discussion. Take a look at your services that you're giving away for free, okay? And say, can I codify them? Can I make a free version and a fee version? So Professor Ulaga, great book, and just really talks about the ability to really structuring a business to say, what are my services? What am I spending money on that customers are taking that they don't value and it's costing me? Or what are the services that I could package and charge for? Quick example, maybe I need to do a design review. Free design review. 10-day turnaround, says pass, fail, one-page drawing, done. Ooh, 3-day turnaround, you want 3 upgrade options, and you want this, this, and this. Fee. You want it shipped fast. I mean, again, there's ways to take everything you offer and make a low-end, high-end version of it. And then as we come to the end here, how do you implement this? And just kind of some of the best practices. You need management buy-in. You need someone to drive it. You need a process around the value pricing officers. You need the tool so that everybody's not running around and it's not just cost avoidances. Are you sending the right messaging? If you sell through channels, they got to see what's in it for them. Be seen as the person that could make a difference. Get the data over time. I can't remember. There's over 200,000 cases in the SCAF system now. It's a great way to go back after lost customers. Customers that are buying on price, going back and telling them how great you are every year is probably not going to do it. A different business model, a fee at risk model might get a chance to really change things. And then really, as a pricing person, help push the sales team to role play in Shark Tank. How do they defend the price with customers? Because it's going to come up. Telling people to sell value, yelling at them, telling them to use a tool, trying to take a lot of credit for things that were free that you're giving away, probably not going to work. So I'm not going to, of course, go through all this, but just so you can see, a lot of academic research has been done around this. It works. Big business schools, from a sales side, from a pricing side, from a marketing side, big procurement associations that have had me come speak. And trust me, the slides are very similar. They want value. It's our job to put some numbers on it. Governments that have changed how they buy to say not 3 bids in the lowest buy, but best value. And then a bunch of consultants that said, you want to know what? Yeah, maybe we keep pushing our, consulting clients to buy differently. Now we really need to upgrade that to value. So with that, I focus on value, how to quantify it, tools for sales teams to work with, marketing, getting the message out there, ROI sheets, training, sales training, marketing training, how to win with procurement, understanding numbers, and then around pricing. How do you capture this? How do you set pricing? How do you do performance-based pricing? How do you new product pricing? All those types of things. So price will be an issue in the absence of value. That value needs to be quantified. So with that, my digits here, email at the bottom, website that I try to keep updated, LinkedIn address at the bottom. And Lisa, I know that we've come right probably to our 45 minutes. So
thank you, Todd, and thank you so much for sharing. And as always, an interesting journey to learn about the intangible elements of value and how we can actually do something with it in order to operate more efficiently. For anyone who's joining in, as you can see, Todd is not able to join us live, but if you have questions, you can either reach out to me or directly to Todd, of course, but otherwise drop me an email and I will make sure to introduce you if you want to further pick his brain on the value concept. Right, Todd?
Of course.
And thank
There's
you
so much to cover.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, Todd. And for the rest of you, let's jump into the next session. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
So yet again, I would like to extend a great thank you to Todd, and thank you for him sitting down with me just the other day here to pre-record us so we could actually leverage his knowledge in this specific session. There's quite a lot of food for thought in that value concept that I think at least I got a lot of out of when watching it. But with no further ado, I have our next speaker live here on the screen. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, great to be here.
And this is Brian Hirt from Zilliant, who is actually going to walk us through, I guess, how to rediscover rebates and discounts. And this is, of course, sometimes a very controversial topic because it causes a little bit of a glitch internally. We always have this, old-fashioned way that salespeople at the end of the cycle throw discounts around to achieve their sort of targets. And then also when used ad hoc, it can be extremely filled with headache for the pricing function. But on the contrary, which I hope then you will walk us through, is that when done correctly and in a strategic way, we can actually have great effects on our bottom line and profit margins by doing it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So over to you, Brian.
Great. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
And also just a quick reminder to everyone who's here watching live that if you have any questions to Brian, because we will have about 10-15 minutes at the end of his session to ask questions, you can post them in the chat and I will take that at the end of Brian's session.
Great, thanks. Yes, as mentioned, I'm Director of Product Management at Zilliant. At Zilliant, we have pricing and sales optimization solutions, and we're focused on the B2B market. And as described, I wanted to walk through our latest solution with rebate management, and I'll walk through a couple of slides to talk through the concept, and I'll give a demo as well. So I first wanted to set the stage and make sure that we're on the same page when I talk about rebates. In my experience dealing with our customers and prospects, rebates mean a lot of different things to different people. And so the rebate solution we focused on is what I describe as an off-invoice credit that's paid to customers. And so I've walked through sort of a simple example here between two parties where you have a customer and a seller. A rebate is negotiated, the seller ships product, customer pays the invoice price, but then based on their performance over a time period or on certain goals, the seller will accrue and then reconcile those rebates and then issue a credit back to the customer, generally on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. I know there are probably a lot of manufacturers on the calls. We're not trying to tackle what I call the ship and debit process, which involves three parties. That's sort of a challenge in and of itself, but for purposes of our discussion, we're focused on what I think of as the two-party rebate. With the current solution and what the current solutions our customers have, we found a number of challenges. So one simple challenge is the time lag between the transaction and the payout. It creates easy ways to sort of lose communication and not be able to track things properly. The accrual process we found to be very labor intensive. Often it's something done in Excel, in accounting, sort of disconnected from the sales team and the actual sales process, but it can be a painstaking process simply to keep up with the rebates that are created and try to accrue those accurately. I think one of the biggest pains is that after the rebate's created and even when it's being accrued, there's no process to actively monitor and manage that. So you might create a rebate agreement with a customer, but unless you've sort of kept that front of mind for both the seller and the customer, you're not really driving the value or the behavior you need out of that rebate. And so that to me is a big gap. There's often a lack of visibility into the impact a rebate has on a customer's profitability. There's limited focus on the overall programs that you might create. So if you create a rebate program that can apply to multiple customers, how do you know how effective that is? Is it driving the strategy and the outcomes that you want? And then I find generally that the rebates are dependent on legacy tools and manual processes. So we've developed a solution to try to address a lot of these primary use cases. There's really three roles as I see it, and I'll focus on each of these a little bit in the demo. But on one side, there's the pricing side, so essentially defining the rebate programs that you want to drive to drive certain behaviors in the business. There's the sales side, so sales users, how do they interact with the rebate programs that are created for their customers? And then the finance side, how do you run the actual accruals? We've broken down the process into these 4 buckets. So we'll look at how do you manage the rebate agreement. So setting up, configuring it, defining all the terms and incentives that go along with it, what customers or products does it apply to. Much of our effort has gone into the accrual process. So based on that configuration of a rebate agreement, how do you actually accrue and define what payments are due to each individual customer? So that there's a complex process there of matching, qualifying transactions back to the rebates and being able to project that, both project the performance of a given program and calculate how customers are progressing against different rebate targets. We also have a unique solution that involves identifying rebate opportunities. So if you have maybe an annual rebate at this time of year in December, you ought to be identifying which customers are close to achieving certain goals. So if a customer is very close to achieving their rebate target or the next tier, this would be a great time to tell them about it. That can help drive, maybe they decide to front load some purchases, and that can help drive the additional volume that a rebate is designed for. And then lastly, obviously, we want to make sure that we've got ways to measure program effectiveness, both before the program is created and after, after it's in progress and accrued. And then we want to be able to tie that into customer profitability analysis. So I'll be able to demo much of this capability today. I'm going to jump over to what we call our Zilliant IQ platform, where I've got the rebates management solution broken out here. So I want to drill into a couple examples to try to illustrate how this works. This is a top-down approach to rebates. Well, I'll also show how we can do it sort of bottoms up. But in this case, I've got multiple programs that I've configured, and I want to I make these programs available to my sales reps so that certain customers can be enrolled in those, and it creates a consistent way to drive rebates. So here, for example, we had a corporate initiative last year. I'll look at this one first, where we wanted to grow online sales. When I drilled into this, I'm able to see the individual rebate tiers associated with it. So we had, I call this an incremental multiplier, in the sense that we will pay out on incremental sales over and above a certain target. Those targets are defined by these minimums of, we want people to, if you grow between 10 and 25%, you get a 0.5% back. You get 1% back on 25 to 45% growth, et cetera. I'm able to configure all these terms for the rebate. Now, this is a past promotion. And so before I finalize my 2021 promotion, I might want to understand how that previous program performed. So I can actually drill in, and right within the interface, I can get some embedded analytics that help me understand how this program performed last year. I can see we had a total payout for the program of over 600,000. It looks like we're able to drive some incremental volume of 1.8 million in the affected customers. Here I can see the individual payouts per customer and what tier they achieved. So within each of these customers, I can see what the payout was. Here's about $1,500, and they achieved the third tier. I can even drill into this customer and get a little detail to see exactly what their revenue was against these online sales, what tiers they achieved, and then what we paid out within each tier. So a lot of ability to sort of drill down and understand how each program has performed. When I'm setting up my new program, for example, I'm able to take the input of maybe what I had with the last iteration of the program, and I can make modifications as needed. So here I've adjusted some of my parameters. I can easily adjust these terms if I want to, and say, I want a different payout amount if I like, to adjust the program. Each program is built around what we call a customer scope, a product scope, and a record scope. So, and here I've defined a customer scope. I only want this to apply to my OEM customers. The record scope helps me identify that I just want to go after online sales. So if I have 2 sales channels, these are attributes that are defined in my transactions. I just want to measure and then pay out against online sales from this promotion. In this case, I don't have a product scope, but I'll show another example product. Here's a promotion where we're trying to drive product mix. So in this demo, I'm selling paper, so I've got paper and envelopes, and we want to drive customers to sort of buy those products in a set mix. And so I can define those volumes here, and I'm able to define specifically what products are included within each line within the product scope tab. So when I set up this 2021 promotion, I have the ability to model out what sort of expected payouts I might have against this. I do this by defining some test periods. This tells me essentially I'm going to sort of apply this retroactively or run a retroactive accrual going back 6 months and assuming I grow 20%. That's what these terms tell me. And so when I drill into the test accrual, I'm able to see, based on all the updated parameters, what sort of expected payouts I'll have, which customers are likely to have the biggest payouts based on their past performance, what tiers I'll hit, et cetera. So this is a way, here I can see I updated the program. I've created a couple more tiers to create more incentive spread, and it looks like this will help drive significantly more volume, and it will cost me a little bit more as a result, but seems like it's going to be worth it for me. So from here, I'd be able to go ahead and publish this promotion. I haven't, I've already done that. And so I'm going to jump then to the interface of a sales rep. So here, this is embedded within a Salesforce environment, or what we call our deal manager solution within Salesforce. And here I'm a sales rep, I'm interacting with an account page, and I get lots of visibility to both the rebates that this customer is enrolled in. I can see specifically how my customer is progressing against a given rebate. So here's my online growth promotion. I can see they've already had 248,000 of online sales. They're very close to achieving that first tier. I can see we have their product mix promotion and how much they've achieved of each of these. They're very close to achieving the second tier for the envelopes category. So I can see what they've already accrued against that. But this is an important way for me as a sales rep to get a very detailed view of how my customer is progressing against the rebates they're enrolled in. As a sales rep, I can also be given the ability to change the way my customers are enrolled in rebates, or actually customize a program for one of my customers. So I'm going to demonstrate that here. So by clicking into a specific program that my customer is enrolled in, I have a couple of options. So one is I can adjust the membership. So a lot of times a given account or a ship to, however sort of the accounts are structured, many times multiple accounts will contribute towards a single rebate promotion. And so that's how this example is structured. Maybe there's a group of accounts, the people's group, and there are multiple specific accounts. These are all could be enrolled and contribute to the same promotion. So I've got people's warehouse, people's storefront, people's office. Perhaps I missed one of the accounts I know that should be contributing to this. So I have the option here to look up a new account, and I forgot people's telephone. So I'm just simply going to add them to the group. And what that does is it adds them to the group so that the next time I run the accruals against this rebate, I'll pick up any sales that people's telephone have are contributing to this as well. So a simple way to help define the groups. Another option is I can drill in and actually modify the terms of the rebate specific to the people's group. So I've got details about the time period this is interacting with, but these are the program lines that sort of came from the top down against, like, this is the bottom up approach. So I could create one of these rebates on the fly if I want to create a custom rebate for my customer. But in this case, I've taken a program that's been come top down, but I can then customize this and modify it as needed. So here I'll give an example of adding a program line. If I want to maybe add a 6th tier, I could say for the 6th tier, we're going to do an incremental multiplier, and I'm just going to increase the benefit payout. So my latest top tier is at 2.5%. So I'll say I'll pay out 3% once they hit 2%, or basically 200% growth, 250% growth. I'm sorry, these should be down here. So if I put these terms in and save it, I've now created a 6th tier that my customer can achieve, and then we can track the payouts against that as soon as I run the accruals. So this is how I get to interact with the rebates as an account manager. I want to go back to the account and give a specific example of one of the ways we can drive focus against these rebates. So one of the things you'll mention is via our Sales IQ and Campaign Manager products, we have on this account, I'm driving specific actions where we want to perhaps recover sales or grow sales or promote some excess inventory. But these are driving account-specific actions across my account base. But we can also use the same capability to drive out nudges against a rebate program. So I'm going to switch quickly to the Campaign Manager product. I won't take time to go into this in detail, but here I have a rebate campaign. This is where I've already created it, and I've got certain thresholds where I can specify I want to basically create an action for any customer that's within 90% of the next rebate tier, and they haven't achieved it yet, and it's not yet the final accrual. That's those zeros mean. So I've run this campaign already. I get a set of results. This tells me which customers have met that. And I'm going to go ahead and publish these actions. This is going to push these out into the Salesforce environment so that my sales reps are made aware of it. I'll let that run for a minute before I go back to the account page. While that runs, I wanted to talk a little bit about the accounting view of the whole rebate process. So everything you've seen is around how we configure the programs, how the sales reps interact with that. But obviously the critical output of that is understanding what payouts are due to which customers and having those accruals run. So this is an interface where I'm able to see by group and program what payouts are due, what's already been paid, I can keep track of, and what's the accrued payout amount. So this is after running the accruals, how much is due for each of my customers. So I get a full visibility to that. We are not trying to be the accounting system of record or actually creating those invoices, but we do want to be a program you can use to track that. So if we can easily export this data into a CSV file, so they can be brought into other accounting systems or sort of built into whatever payment processor needed. But this is a simple way to be able to track that. I can keep track of what's been paid. I can update the payment amounts as needed right here within a worksheet and have all those capabilities. So here I'll click here and be able to see that download. So hopefully this gives you a great picture of how you can help drive rebates in a more effective way, both to simplify the accrual process, but also drive the right behavior with their sales reps and keep things front of mind for sales reps, and then ultimately for your customers to help drive the behavior you're focused on. I'll go ahead and stop my share and then back to you.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for sharing this, and a really interesting, view on rebates and how it can be used. One of the things that comes to mind in my head is, of course, the true definition in the difference between a rebate and a discount. If you get where I'm heading at here, a rebate
Yes.
can be a more, long-term, maybe strategic approach. So how would you like to clarify that for the audience and how you can work with those aspects?
Yeah, I think the simplest way I would try to differentiate the two is, to me, a discount is on invoice and a rebate is off invoice. So a rebate is effectively a discount, but a lot of times it's tied to performance term. So you might be talking with your customers and say, hey, I'll give you a 10% discount, but you might be doing that with the expectation that the customer is going to spend $1 million with you, right? Well, a rebate is an alternative approach to say, I'll give you 10% if you buy $1 million, right? The customer doesn't have the benefit of getting the 10% discount throughout, but if that is indeed what they expect to do, you're able to tie that discount to the performance. Obviously, the challenges of that are everyone has to keep track of that, and you have to run the accrual. And so that's really one of the problems we try to solve with this. You can easily create a program defining when you hit $1 million, you get 10% off, and running that accrual. But it helps drive that behavior. So because I think in reality, the challenge is often you give the 10% discount and the customer comes up short on their expected purchases, and so now you've maybe given them a discount more than what they might have otherwise needed.
Yeah, and basically you're rewarded a non-long-term behavior in one sense. So
right.
Yeah, very true. And then of course one of the other things coming to mind is, from a strategic sourcing perspective, I guess rebate is quite attractive. At least that's a terminology that I've heard from a sourcing perspective mentioned a lot of time. Do you see that organizations that has a more strategic approach to the rebate program has also, let's say, an easier win when it comes to speaking to procurement or sourcing, in that sense that they have this already outlined?
I think it can be, definitely especially when I've talked with distributors, they can be very focused on rebates, and in many cases they've suggested it's a primary source of their net profit, right? Is their ability to collect rebates. So I think if you're a manufacturer, being able to create well-structured programs and to even be proactive with helping your customers understand where they stand against those programs, I think would be very attractive, because even for the distributors that maybe have are collecting against rebates from a manufacturer, it's an administration challenge on them. So if you can sort of promote, hey, we have a solution we'll send you a statement every month and let you know where you're progressing. I think that's certainly a value prop for a, maybe for a manufacturer.
And I mean, in life, of course, even a rebate is, I mean, a lowered price at some point, or a lower investment for the customer in the end, because it comes retroactively after you've spent a certain amount. But do you see, I mean, doing all this data analysis, do you see that the customers that have a rebate program in place has a better effect on their overall bottom line and profit margin on those expected customers, because they can tie in this incentive? Is it lucrative, if you get my perspective, or would it be more lucrative to not have a rebate program?
Yeah, great question. I think the reality is the answer is going to, it's going to differ, widely, I think, across industries. What I've experienced and what I've observed is that rebates are part of the puzzle, right? So, pricing is I think of it as a game of inches, and it's a game where you've got multiple strategies. Some of the strategy varies, greatly across industries, but it might be, you've got the list price, you've got the discount, you've got rebates, you've got, potentially other incentives that are made available. And so there's simply a lot of ways to try to drive the right behavior with your customers. And I think what I've observed is that rebates are simply a good tool to have in your chest, in a sense, to be able to drive the right behavior. For some customers, they may be only interested in, hey, what's my invoice price? That's all I care about. I'm not interested in the rebates, so that's fine. You can sort of give them the heavier discounts. But for customers that are incentivized by a rebate program, I think it's important to have that, to have that available, to be able to create those programs and drive the value and the performance out of your customers.
Absolutely, and I understand that as well. So if someone wants to, I mean, you showcase quite a hands-on demo here, where you can move between Windows and sales and finance and so forth. How do you say you're in the best way interlinked that conversation with the sales team for like an optimized use of this kind of programs? Yeah,
I'm actually, because since this is a live demo, I realized I forgot to sort of display one of the last steps. So if it's okay, I'll actually
go back
share
to
that again for a minute. So after I created the campaign that said, hey, we want to notify our sales reps about different rebate targets, I added a couple items to my action list here. So this helps me understand. I'm now sort of proactively pinging the sales rep and saying, hey, I want you to focus on this customer who's very close to hitting their first tier of this grow online sales and this envelopes tier. So this is basically, after we run the accruals, we've got this, we've got a bunch of data that helps define where a customer stands against that, but we can now then push these out proactively to the sales reps here on the account page. We also present these on the dashboard for customers, so we can say, hey, you've got 50 customers that are close to hitting their next rebate target. So to me, it's about, we don't necessarily have the tools to be communicating directly with the customer base, but where we integrate with CRM solutions, we're able to make it certainly top of mind for the sales reps who are having the conversations with the customers, so that you can, as they're putting together the next order, you can help them, realize, hey, you've got an opportunity here to buy more envelopes. You'll hit this next tier. I win, you win, and just help keep it front of mind is the way I'd go about it.
And do you have any sort of great examples on where, or customer case studies where this has been implemented with a very sort of good effect into their overall commercial excellence or strategy? Do you want to share any of those?
Yeah, honestly, I don't. This is a product that we've just launched in the third quarter, so we're still in the customer acquisition phase. We have customers that are getting started on this, but I don't yet have. I'd love to have a case study, but not yet.
And when you do then launch, or it is launched, but when you look at who to sort of onboard to this kind of service or product, who do you see would be a great fit to use something like that? What is required for an organization to actually be optimizing a tool like this?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in general, it's I'm not expecting that somebody who doesn't do rebates today is watching this webinar and says, well, I should do rebates. I think it's in a lot of ways, it's a challenge to bring on, even with, a solution like ours. It's still, it's a go-to-market strategy. It's part of a business model.
Yeah.
And so, generally the target audience are people who are already, doing rebates and who feel the pain. I think, I listed, on one of my first slides, just what are the pain points we're trying to address. And, if those are pain points you resonate with, then I think that's the focus. I think certainly our focus has been on the pain of the accrual side. I'd say I think our solution appeals well to those sort of in the accounting space who are sort of dealing with this and have a challenge understanding the rebates, which I think a lot of times the rebates are like written on a napkin and sort of they tell accounting about it at the last minute and then they have to deal with those. So I think our solution helps keep it front of mind and systematic. And so where there is no system in place, we can help drive the right processes there.
And I think also from manufacturers, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but if those rebates come as like a surprise at the very closing end of a contract, or the time span of a contract, of course, that gets knock-on effects on the whole sort of total cost of ownership, what has been the sort of circular, life cycle of that product. And no one wants a surprise discount, let's say, or rebate from nowhere at the end of a contract. And as you say, I think we see a lot of examples of actual rebates being established as a reactive force rather more than a proactive force. And do you see a need for this more? Because of course, this is a go-to-market model, as you say, and it's also a way of capturing your customers for a long-term cycle by basically incentivizing them to stay loyal, right? And in these times where there is quite a lot of turbulence and volatility, do you see that those who have a rebate program that's more strategic in place win more customers, if you get my point here?
Yeah, I think I'd be hard pressed to give you sort of honest data points on that, but I think absolutely, I think it can, by design, if you have a rebate program that is front of mind for your customers, front of mind for your sales reps, it's naturally going to drive behavior. If I just went back to the simple example, you get the 10% when you buy the $1 million. Well, if they've bought 900,000 from you at the end of the year, chances are they're going to go ahead and place the order and get the 10% discount, on retroactively on those sales. And so in that case, that's a win-win in my case, right? The customer's happy because they get the discount that they wanted. You're happy because you're able to front load and sort of keep their commitment to you, as opposed to spending that last 100,000 with a competitor, right?
Absolutely. Well said. And do you have any final remarks for the audience, Brian, that you want to leave them with after today?
I appreciate the opportunity. I hope this has given everyone a good feel for, how Zilliant can help with your rebates management solution across different components. I think maybe the only thing I'd add is we do actually sort of sell this in modules, in the sense that if you're only interested in the, the back end solution, we can deliver that as well. The front end, comes with our deal manager product. So if you're looking at things and you just like, only parts of it, that's all part of what we can deliver. So.
Good, and thank you for that. And thank you so much, Brian, for your time. And if you who are watching has any questions for Brian or the team at Zilliant, you can reach out to the Copperberg team or directly to Brian, of course. And we will make sure to introduce you if you reach out to us. And of course, if you want to refresh your memory, the recording of this demo will also be available for you tomorrow. With no further ado, then I would like to present, thank you, Brian. I would like to present our next speaker, who's here on camera as well. Hi, Benjamin.
Hi to everyone.
Thank you for joining. I'm very happy to have you on board as well this afternoon for us. I know you're based in Germany, but the audience, the majority of them is, of course, watching us from the US, where it's morning. But thank you for joining. And you're the principal of Functional Competence Center Sales Marketing and Pricing at Horvath Partners. So that is, by the way, a very long title.
This is why we shortened it now to Horvath. So
oh yeah, okay, only Horvath. Okay, yeah, okay,
easier.
Perfect. But I know you're actually going to walk us through AI-based pricing, and you have an example from the building automation industry. But I think this is yet again proven that, I mean, AI, data, all these kind of insightful tools that we have, and I think people have started to rely even more on because of the sort of remote situations we've had, that we've been dependent on real-time dashboards to a different, extent than maybe before the pandemic, where we could exchange information more, just by being in the same room. Now we have to all look at one truth in order to make some of our day-to-day decisions. So I'm really excited to hear what you can share with us on how we use AI to optimize our pricing functions. So I would like to hand over to you, but just a small remark for the audience. If you do have questions, post them in the chat or DM me directly, and I will raise them for Benjamin at the very end. Over to you, Benjamin.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to present some of our insights and experiences on AI-based pricing. My name is Benjamin Schwarzer from Horvath, principal of the unit Sales, Marketing and Pricing. And in the following 30 minutes, I would like to give you a few insights on what are our typical benefits of AI-based pricing, what are also typical use cases we have experienced in the past, and then also a deep dive into one specific use case that we recently developed and consulted a firm about in the building automation industry. So let me quickly give you an introduction to our understanding of AI-based pricing in B2B. To start off, let's say, giving a few insights about the main advantages of AI-based pricing. So first of all, what we experience is that in the projects we conducted, that the profitability uplift is typically even higher than normal pricing projects in the range of 2 to 8 percentage points. So especially for corporates that have already exploited traditional pricing measures, they can really benefit from that. And also what is a big advantage is that through AI-based pricing, it is easier to individualize pricing decisions and be more precise. So in terms of differentiating prices and providing prices in a real-time manner, AI-based pricing is a good measure. Also, what we see is that the efficiency is increased through improved automation. So this leads actually to being able to spend a capacity of pricing teams more in the direction of more strategic or tactical decision and tasks. And the last 2 points are going into the direction of flexibility and responsiveness. So our experience is that through AI-based pricing, when making the let's say, recommendations and final prices quite transparent, it becomes a really not only one-way street, but a way that sales can really work with that, play with the figures, and improve pricing for the customer. Our experiences in AI-based pricing is also that it's not only targeting in the specific field of price setting, but it covers mainly all aspects of traditional pricing levels. So be it, for example, the topic of supporting price differentiation in the mean of dynamic customer segmentation or price segmentation, for example, or improved negotiation processes or price analytics, price forecasting enabled by AI-based pricing. There are numerous ways and levers to improve pricing here. So our key recommendation is to capture the benefits in all of these levers you see here and develop specific use cases, test them, and then scale them up internationally in your organization. What you see here are use cases we have developed in the past. And what we experience is that, I mean, in B2C, AI-based pricing has been a standard for a long time, but now also in B2B, AI-based pricing becomes more and more familiar and used. And this is why we apply different ways of analytics-based pricing in different fields in terms of price and discount recommendations, for example, or geo pricing, or where especially in commodity business, where we do market price forecasts. So a lot of use cases that can be applied also in B2B. And let's say our experience is also that especially small and mid-sized companies, they are also highly interested in moving into that direction, but they often make the experience that they do not want to implement a huge pricing solution right from the start. So they are searching for a specific pricing tool solution that can support AI-based pricing. And this is the reason why we, as Horvath, also developed our own capabilities in developing the specific models and algorithms that make AI-based pricing possible, and also very customized tools, tool solutions that can be used to apply AI-based pricing. So this is also our learning and key recommendation. Search for use cases and then implement use cases in for example, a pilot market or a pilot customer segment, and then roll it out and scale it up very fast in order to capture the entire benefit. And these use cases also lead really to significant effects on the bottom line. So here you see a few examples of use cases and projects we have conducted at customers in B2B in the past, where significant uplifts have been achieved in the field of pure profitability uplift, but also, for example, in the field of cross and upselling or churn reduction. So there are different fields where AI-based pricing can get into action, and where it really becomes a real profit driver. Now I would like to present to you one specific case or use case that we have implemented at the B2B company in the building automation industry. I have selected this project case because of numerous reasons. The first reason was that this project was a little bit different to other projects we have conducted in the past, because the client said, well, with us or in our pricing team, we have, let's say, captured all the traditional pricing measures, and we are quite mature already in pricing. Now we want to move to the next stage and use our data we have and search for specific AI-based pricing measures. So please leave your traditional pricing levels at home and provide us with specific use cases for our industry that we can leverage and that we can exploit very quickly in order to achieve bottom line effect. Also, what specifically here was interesting, that the AI-based pricing approach here tackled not only the traditional product business, but also the service and solution business. So it was a quite broad approach for the entire business. It was an international project. and it covered a lot of different use cases. And for sure, as you can see here on the slide, with 3 percentage points bottom line effect, it was also a very successful project. And this is the reason why I selected it. But one of the key use cases and levers we identified and implemented was, we called it an AI discount recommender. What was this discount recommender about? We started off collecting transactional data, CRM data, customer data, and wanted basically to develop a model that was able to predict discounts to specific customers and a product in a specific transaction. So the customer had already a discount model in place, but this discount model was applicable, let's say, for a specific customer segment or for a specific product segment. But they were not able to discount on a specific transaction in a very, very differentiated manner. And that was the main goal, to achieve that with a discount recommender. So the discount recommender had 2, let's say, features and dimensions that were important. The one is that the discount recommender and model learned from previous transaction of similar customers with a similar product that was offered. And besides of that, sales was providing the tool with certain information with input features you see here on the left side. For example, the customer, let's say, potential for the future, or the numbers of orders that are expected in the future. And these inputs that were given to the discount recommender led to a specific discount recommendation. So this was the first main let's say, dimension of this tool, is that it was, on the one hand, past driven, but also future driven through the input of the sales reps. The second main feature was on the very bottom, that sales was directly presented a list of similar customers that have been granted a discount for this specific product. So the discount recommendation that was provided by the discount recommender could already been compared in real time with similar, let's say, cases, and thereof it became transparent for sales why this discount recommendation has been provided. And the third main aspect and advantage of the tool was on the very right corner, that it was important that this tool and model is not a black box for sales, so that they really understand why the final discount recommendation has been developed. So the bridge you see here is the concrete explanation why and how the final recommendation has been, let's say, derived, based on which factors and in criteria. So giving us a specific example, you see here that for a specific customer, the final realized price was the realized discount was 47%, but the recommended discount was 42%. So how did the tool or model come to this final recommended discount? Well, you see that on the left side, the base was always the average discount of a specific customer segment, and then a few features lead to the final discount recommendation. So first of all, for example, the customer and product specific average discount of the last year in the segment. Also, some of the input parameter I already mentioned, like for example, how many different products have been sold, or what is the customer potential, how many orders have been placed in the previous year. And these factors basically lower or increase the recommended discount and come to a final discount recommendation. So at the end, we tested for sure the model also, and the accuracy of the model was 97%. And it showed that in a lot of cases, the prediction was matching the actual given discount, but also in a lot of cases, and this is can be seen on the right bottom part, that in a lot of cases, the given discount by sales was way higher than the predicted discount. And this is basically, yeah, lost profit and lost money, where sales is now really working on improving that in the future with the tool. The next lever was considering geo pricing. So this tool basically was able to identify the willingness and to pay, but also the value of customers in different regions, in this case in Germany, in order to derive specific price and discount recommendations. And for that, we not only considered internal information that was available, like transactional data, for example, but also external statistics data, for example, that basically then was able to differentiate pricing here in the different regions, cities, and on a very granular level. So it was basically we were able to identify value of customers on a zip code level. The next lever and tool we developed was a specific tool for the surface price, or for the surface business of the customer. Well, this is a different type of business, because here we are working with typical service contracts that have a specific duration. And also here we developed a tool where a final recommendation for a final service price has been provided. And also here the main let's say challenge was to first of all gather all the contracts of the past and put them into the system to make really data and figures available, and then based on similar contracts of a specific customer in the past, derive a comparable and concrete price for a specific service offering or for a service contract. And last but not least, we also developed, let's say, a combined tool for the solution business of the customer. Well, here we developed, we called it a win probability forecaster. So this win probability forecaster was assessing how probable it was that a contract or an offer is won at a specific transaction at a specific customer. And also here, on the one hand, we worked with already, let's say, past data or transactional data from the past of the customer, but also specific information that sales was inserting in the tool, like, for example, the competitive situation. So how many competitors are involved in the current negotiation process? What is the level of negotiation power? What is the product field we are working in? So different factors that are considered in order to calculate this win probability. And the result of this win probability forecaster, for example, a win probability of 97%, then led to adaptation of the final discount. So we combined this tool with the discount recommender I presented a few seconds ago. So when the win probability exceeds a certain threshold, the discount, the recommended discounts was, let's say, reduced by a certain amount, in this case, by 1.5%. So it's this additional criteria, an additional factor that is considered in the discount recommendation tool. An additional topic that now gets more and more, let's say, interesting also for B2B customers and producer is the topic of product recommendations. Also here, we know that from Amazon and other players that product recommendation is state of the art and is used anytime. But in the B2B business, it's quite new actually. So here we also developed a tool in order to provide very specific product recommendations. So how does it work? Well, typically sales provides or is asked by the customer about a specific product. In this case, for example, a smoke detector for the specific customers. But what is also interesting to know and important for sales to know, what have similar customers also bought? So for example, an installation magnet to install the smoke detector, or for example, a battery, or for example, other smoke detectors that have the same functionality, but have a higher margin. And the key goal basically is to finally have product recommendations in addition to the request that the customer has, in order to have a final basket that is bigger than the initial one. And also for that, we developed a specific tool. We call that white spot identification tool, where, let's say, sales is entering, for example, when before a customer visit takes place or a customer call takes place, he's entering the customer name and he gets a list of white spot products. So products that have not been offered to this customer so far, but to similar customers. And also he gets, let's say, insights on what are comparable customers in this case. So he gets a list of these customers so that he can get a feeling, okay, how did the recommendation of the white spot tool develop? And then he can also calculate, or the tool automatically calculates profit potential when he is able to close these white spots, or at least a certain amount of these white spots. And it's also providing, let's say, a certain prioritization list. So he gets customers where the biggest white spot potential is, so he can check that on a regular basis and step by step approach these customers and offer and provide product recommendations to them. The reason why I presented is that we use these tools also for deriving price recommendations. So it's a great input for example, price bundling, because looking at the example that I just recently now showed, for example, for this entire package of smoke detector, installation magnet, and battery, let's think about a good price for the entire bundle that we can offer to the customer and incentivize the customer for for cross and upselling. Well, to summarize, what we often experience is that customers, when thinking about AI-based pricing, say, well, we are not quite sure if we are mature enough and if we have enough data, good data to work in this direction. And our experience that in almost all the cases, it's never the case that there is no data. There is data. It's often not really explored, or the data quality itself is not good enough. So here we are, let's say, working in these projects at least 30 to 50% of the time on cleansing data, making data really available, and then using this data, this data treasure, in order to improve pricing decisions. That's it from my side. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Benjamin, and thank you for sharing and a very good presentation. I do have a question from the audience that I was going to just bring up here. Basically, what is the algorithm that you use for prediction, and what is the level of error risk exposure ? Here. Is it something you can elaborate on?
Yeah, I can elaborate. I mean, we have at Horvath a specific unit which is called the steering lab, which is part of Horvath Digital, which are developing this algorithm. And in this case, it was XG Boost. It's coming from the family of supervised machine learning models, mm-hmm. And it's a gradient boosting measure. So this is the model basically, and the algorithm that was applied.
Okay, thank you. And I think the very final slide there of data was actually quite interesting as it comes to, I mean, data is of course the foundation on which AI is built on. So, you know, no data, no AI. And this is often something that I feel that the delegate community encounters. Let's say the main challenge is between the actual vision and the sort of execution of these ideas. So if someone wants to really, let's say, make use of the data they can have, or they, you know, how should they think when it comes to structuring such projects, and what needs to be in place in order for an AI driven pricing function? Just if you want to sort of narrow it down to a few things, is it governance? Is it, I mean, what are the critical aspects to think of when you start an AI project?
Well, first of all, often the problem is that the data is lying in numerous, let's say,
lakes,
data lakes, databases. So finance has something, then in the CRM there are customer information. Then we have in the ERP we have transactional data. Then we have credit data, for example. So the first task is always to combine these data and really cleanse it and throw out the data that is not really relevant and would make the analysis irrelevant, for example. So this is one big task, and for that my learning is that strict, let's say, data governance, but also data responsibilities is important for each data domain. Clearly define who is responsible in the organization to foster the quality of the data, and make sure that it's also consistent throughout the entire organization, so that there is the same definition and understanding, a same understanding about the calculation logic, and the data is always at one place.
And I think that's exactly, I think what we see a lot is this, the best sort of success scenarios is for those who've had a clear strategy, a clear ownership, because I mean, if your data is everywhere, it's also a huge project to take on, almost humongous, very exhausting, extremely, you know, resource demanding, and therefore we need to have a clear strategy, so we know that that job that's put down into that is actually then going to be something that we can leverage later on. So how should one go about thinking about the strategy? Because of course, I guess not every organization fits for AI driven. So who is this most suitable for? Is it the ones with an abundance of data that needs structure? Would that be the best fit?
No, I mean, it's applicable for basically every company, but as I tried to outline, is that do not wait too long until you have, let's say, S4 HANA project or some database project, but start kicking it off with collecting data and piloting it and developing use case in a certain way as a starting point. So use AI-based pricing or similar project as a starting point to improve data quality and also availability, because it's one main, let's say, outcome of these projects that the data is at one point now then really cleansed and available and in a good quality.
Yeah, thank you. And also one of the things you showed a slide there that obviously this program had a very strong effect on the bottom line in terms of margins there, of course. And if someone was to look into price optimization via AI, would, in your experience working in this field, where are the biggest surprises where companies actually say, oh, we didn't see that one coming, but that's a great benefit? Do you have any sort of learning points where actually there's a aha moment with your customers and they say, this is something we can actually really, take care of the benefits of?
Well, I mean, often it's rather the simple things that provide a huge benefit. I mean, this price and discount recommendation tool. It's basically from the concept itself. It's not rocket science, but it was not available, and the important thing there was to involve sales in developing that and making this black box of pricing decisions, let's say, more transparent and try to understand how you can improve. So often these are the topics around price and guided pricing, peer pricing, and discount recommendations, where a lot of benefit comes from typically.
And do you think from this is more of an organizational perspective and the human aspect, because of course some of the main challenges, I mean, in the pricing field, but it applies to many fields, but it's of course the cross-departmental work that needs to be done in terms of having a strong go-to-market strategy or so forth. And in pricing, it's often, the sales, it's marketing, it's the pricing function and finance. And I mean, do you see that when they have a strategy or a dashboard and a sort of full transparency into data, do you also see that has a positive effect on the cross-departmental work? Is it minimizing the risk for misunderstanding, or is it actually then maybe showcasing someone's weaknesses? There's always a balance act there, right?
No, it's I mean, it's providing basically help. So in this project, when we developed this price recommender or discount recommender, it was quite accepted and cool for sales, because they really then try to challenge each other and improve their pricing decisions. They saw, okay, I don't know who, but some other guy gave a similar customer for this product lower discount. How can that happen? So it becomes a little bit of then a challenge and also a way of working with the system. So we saw that, for example, they played with the tool in a way that if I now am able to sell, let's say, 10 or 20 more pieces of smoke detectors, how would the price and discount recommendation then look like, for example? So it also leads to thinking about boosting sales, for example, or discussing with customers in another way. So
but that's actually interesting that creates some kind of accountability towards your own pipeline and outcome, in that sense that you can steer, your own sort of sales possibilities going forward in a more insightful way. I mean, and what you're saying also about sales is interesting, and the black box of pricing, as you called it, but that's often a comment we get, that the pricing function seems sometimes from the outside world, I'm not saying this is true, like a little bit of a hidden secret, and it's a lot of spreadsheets and numerical algorithms and mathematical things that are going on. And then we have the sales guys, normally, or girls by all means, who are less patient and need to close things rapidly and very competitive. So there is also needs to be a harmonization in terms of departmental mindset for this to be optimized. So if everyone can look at the same dashboard with the same benefits and outcomes from it, of course, it will optimize the whole organizational structure around the pricing model. And I actually liked what you said, and I think that's very true. We see it in our organization, that when you make something visible to the sales team, they normally, they go on a competition.
Yeah.
So it triggers their sort of nature.
How sales is, yeah.
That's why they are in sales, right? That's why we love them as well. Exactly. So that's the whole, I mean, it's self-fulfilling in one sense. So anything else you would like to end with or leave the audience with before we close the seminar for today?
I can only offer, if you have any questions, contact me at any time, because I was not only able to show, let's say, one or two of the cases. I mean, we are living now since or for 2 years now in the times of Corona. So there are specific pricing challenges that can be tackled by AI-based pricing also in the current situation, and also in the field of commodity pricing, for example, AI-based pricing can also bring a huge impact. So please feel free to contact me at any point of time. We can share these examples.
Absolutely. And if you don't know where to find Benjamin, you can drop the Copperberg team a note. Otherwise, he's all over LinkedIn in promotion for our events. But otherwise, drop the Copperberg team a note, and we would do the introduction, of course, and facilitate that you get in contact. With that said, then I would like to summarize this day and say it's been a very insightful 2 hours here. And thank you, Benjamin, for sharing at the very end here. And for all of you watching, we will, of course, share the recording afterwards, so you can go back to the presentations if you want to see what was said. If you signed up but didn't watch live, you will, of course, have received the recording since you're watching me in the recorded version then. Also, any questions or feedback to the Copperberg team, just drop us a note as always. And the Copperberg team and I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I don't think we have anything else in store in terms of pricing before the year's end. But we're, of course, back next year with further discussions, both for our Manufacturing Pricing Excellence event coming up in May, as well as we touch upon the pricing models, of course, in our e-commerce platform, eConnect, and spare parts business platform, where we discuss parts pricing. So we have a lot in store for you coming up in terms of pricing aspects. So thank you again to all the panelists, and thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of the day for our US watchers, and a continued nice evening for everyone based in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.